If you have seen my previous video on GUI scripting, you probably know how to create a script, how to do recording in SAP, and how to put it into Microsoft Excel. And this video is not going to do a lot more in terms of what you can do in SAP and in scripting, but what I wanted to show you is how you can use this technique to create something, a little bit more with a little bit of programming and a little bit of automation in Excel. So we were going live on a project, and in the last week we had to create some orders manually, and this was an exercise also for some of the end users to actually create something in the live system for the first time and get their hands on order creations in CRM and using the WebIC and so on. So obviously there was a lot of management attention on how we are progressing, how many documents are being created, how we are with regards to the target. And I was asked all the time about, okay, how many orders we have created today, or have we done 50, 100, whatever. So I quickly put this reporting together in Excel using GUI scripting, and that's what I'm going to show you now. The reason I'm calling this video Office Reporting, because essentially it's about extracting data from SAP, doing some reporting in Excel using the various Excel functions, and then displaying it within Microsoft Excel. It was obviously easier for me to do it all this in Excel because that was something that I could do without my own. It doesn't require any programming or anything like that. And it was also easy to present because I had this running on my PC, and then it was presented in a meeting room. So what this code does, or what the Excel does, is I have a control sheet where I have various buttons. I can do update now, which extracts all the information from SAP on demand, or I can do this start update or stop update, which starts a timer within Microsoft Excel, and that timer automatically calls this update functionality in every 20 minutes or so. So I could have this Excel, running on my laptop with a screen and net meeting, smart cloud presented, and just leave it on my machine. The only thing I had to make sure that I disable the screensaver, and it will automatically fetch the data from SAP and update itself, and obviously present it to anyone. So let me just cover quickly what it does in terms of how it updates the code. You can see on the screen that it says something like CRM today and ECC today. So we were creating orders in CRM. So I wanted to see how many documents we have in CRM and how many we have in ECC, just to make sure that we are, not having any issues with the middleware. But obviously in a simpler scenario, you just have one set of data. So when the code starts, what it does, it calls SE16. And then it loads a table, for example, CRM order ready MH. And instead of setting all the different search values within the script, what I did is I saved everything in a variant. And in the script, I'm just calling the variant. So I'm just pressing this button to get the variant. I named the variant in a way that it always the first one to come up in the list. So in case I have more than one, so I load the variant. The variant would have a maximum number of hits set to a couple of thousand, just to make sure that everything is covered. I hit execute, and then I execute the export functionality. So %PC, and then I say I want unconverted, which is the CSV format, and I would paste my my folder in and the file name, and I would actually click on replace, because I want to make sure that if this script is running for the second time, then it can just override the previous extract. So that's all what the script does. And then once the GUI script completes and the data is extracted to my machine, then I picked it up, import it to Excel. So I have two worksheets here, which is one for CRM and one for ECC, and you can see that this is the CRM ODRM H table, and the other one is the VBAK table from ECC, and then I start number crunching. Well, I have one additional step, which is the CRM data sheet, for one reason, because when you extract the data, I didn't want to use the posting date to determine what was created today or any particular day, but I'm using the created at a field from CRM, from the database, but it has its weird format. So the way I managed to resolve that is, as you can see, there is a bit of code in here. Well, not code, but Excel stuff. So I am okay, so I just had to think about what I did. So actually using the date field, using this date function and feeding in the year and the month and the day manually using the using the created at field, and this is how I construct the date in Excel format. The rest of the calculation is done in the data sheet in the Excel file. So you can see on the top I have the overall figures, well, this is not the overall figures. This is the daily figures. So I'm just doing a count if in the CRM data sheet in column K, which is the date column. Sorry, wrong one. Yeah, which is the created at column, which shows all the dates in a proper Excel format. And I'm saying the condition that the countif, the criteria for the countif is control B3, which is a field it's a field in control B3, which is a date, which is today's date. I mean, I manually set it back to the date when we were going live so that the Excel shows something, but normally this would say today. So every time you open the Excel file, it would automatically update itself. So if you open it tomorrow, it will update itself to to the current date of today. You don't have to make any changes. You just press the button to start the update, and it would just work. So I'm just going to set it back to an earlier date. And of course, because most of these functions will take the the date from the control sheet, then again everything in the file, the Excel file, would just update automatically. And I have these few rows here, which will provide the breakdown for the last 20 days. So again, you start with today, and then you do -1 day, -1 day, -1 day, and again you do count if to see how many items I have in CRM or how many orders, and you do the similar count if, but from the ECC sheet, which contains the ECC data. And of course, you compare it with the date, which is being decremented here. So you get a nice data of the number of contracts in each system. And then you use the SUMIF function to SUMIF the values, the net value, which is coming in from the ECC table. Again, based on the actual date, and you divide it by 1000, because I wanted to get a K 1000 values. And all I'm doing in the summary field is I'm just referring to the relevant fields from the data one, and then obviously the chart is created based on these values. Based on these table values. And again, important piece of information is this field here, which also comes from the control table. So every time the update runs, at the end, or either at the beginning or at the end of the update, the script itself would update this field with the current time and date stamp. So everyone looking at the screen can say that, oh, okay, this is the data from about 5 minutes ago. I wouldn't be able to show you how it works live, mostly because I don't have that sort of access to the system anymore, and secondly, this report was really crude. I mean, I'm just extracting data from SA16, which obviously was a pretty small table when we were going live, but now it's, you know, it's quite big. So if you're doing anything like this, you should also take the impact on the system into consideration. And obviously, even if you are using SA16, you should be able to use the change field, the created at field, to say that, okay, I only want data for the last 10 days. So your extract is always going to be relatively small. But what I'm going to do now is just to go through the Visual Basic Code to show you how that works. So I'm pressing, I almost forget, is it? Yeah, Alt F11 to get the code. And so you see, it's sort of the usual same layout as the previous example. Just to go through the main, the important bits. To make this work, you have to make sure that within the references you have SAP GUI scripting API as part of your references. If you don't find it in the list, you just browse and then you find this OCX file. So it's the SAP frontend, SAP GUI, SAP fewse.ocx. So as in the previous example, all my code is in a separate module. So I just click on modules and I open up module 1. The first big difference is this initial few lines of code. This is something which is provided. So this is required for the timer functionality, and it's provided by, you know, Microsoft, or, you know, Microsoft Windows. So I had to put these few lines of code in order to use the timer functionality, to set the timer and to kill the timer. And that's all that it requires. So you just have to copy and paste and use the same piece of code. And then we have a few additional values. I have a timer ID and I have a B timer state, which just shows me if the timer is running or not. And I do have a few other stuff here which I don't think I'm going to be using this example, because I have enhanced this reporting further, which I may cover in a next video. And you can see some of the other variables are the same as the previous one. So I have the GUI object, the connection object, the session object, the status bar object, and I have an object for the actual worksheet I'm working on. And other important bit is this f path and the two file names. So I'm just storing this to specify where I want these files to be extracted and what should be the exact file names, because obviously I would need to use that later. So let's go back to the Excel file. So I will start, let's look at the update functionality. So if I look at the code behind it, this one is executing the start extract function. So let's go into the code and then let's look for start extract. So this function itself is quite simple. So what I'm doing here is, first, there is a global variable W system where I store the client and the SID and the client ID. And you can see, if you remember in the previous example, there was placed or maintained in a field within the Excel file, but I didn't want that to show on the screen, so I just hard coded into the Visual Basic Code. And the other reason I did that, because I'm connecting to two systems in this script, and I just was lazy to, you know, just do it, just put it into the Excel and reference from an Excel cell. But anyway, you can decide to change that. So I'm setting that I want to connect to PC200, so that was our production CRM system, and then I start a CRM action to extract the CRM data, and then I do a session end transaction. So I wanted to terminate that session, because then in the next step, I'm setting my system to PE200, which was the production ECC system. I start another method, which is the start ECC action, and then I terminate that session as well. Because this is running in a loop, I wanted to make sure that I'm not, you know, keeping too much resources on the production system. So as soon as I do the extract, I disconnect, or actually, well, I come off from the GUI session. I'm still logged on to the two SAP clients. And so the next one, I'm switching onto the CRM sheet, and I'm deleting all the data. And then open CRM text file is a piece of function which opens up the CSV extract, which was created in here, and then loads it into Excel. And then I switch over to the ECC sheet. Again, I delete all previous data and I open up the ECC CSV file. And because the Excel itself is set to automatic calculation, by the time I finish with these two methods, the system will automatically recalculate all the values on the data sheet. So I don't really have to do anything. And next step, what I'm doing is I'm changing to the control sheet and I'm setting cell 22 to the value of now. And that's the piece of code which updates the extract date and time to the current timestamp. And then I'm switching to the summary sheet, which is the main presentation page. And so what you can see here is when this starts, then it is doing some stuff in ECC, and then it's changing a couple of sheets to open up the data, and then it's quickly jumping to the control sheet to set the values, and then it jumps to the summary sheet. So with the amount of data I'm working and the amount of calculation I have in the data sheet, this really runs in, or actually it did run in a couple of seconds. So you see the screen freezing a little bit when it's doing the extract, and then it's doing a little bit of switching when it loads the data. So the screen flickers, and then after a couple of seconds it goes back to the summary. I mean, you can tweak this code a little bit by not changing the sheet and still updating the data, but it wasn't really an issue for me, so that was just fine. And you may ask whether the SAP screen would come onto the Excel file, and I think it probably does, but I was working in two screens. So I had Excel in one screen, which I was sharing and presenting, and then I had my main screen where I had all the SAP windows. So this is where all the scripting was happening, and still you couldn't really see that on the other screen. But that's just a bit of technicality. So let's go into CRM start action, or start CRM action. So you see that here I'm attaching to the session. So I'm calling the attach session function to connect to SAP. And again, I just hard coded in PC 200 here. I'm not sure why I did it in both places, but the rest of the code is pretty much the same as what we have seen in the previous video. So we have a code which was generated by the GUI scripting. And if you read that code, you can pretty much tell what is happening. So I'm maximizing the window, I'm calling /NSE16, I'm entering the table name, and I'm pressing enter. And oh, actually, I can see that I'm entering some of the filters here. So this is my transaction type, and this is my date, blah blah blah. So that's one way of doing that. The other way is rather using a variant. So in case you don't have to use, if you need to change anything on your selection screen, you can change the variant instead of changing the code. But you can, for example, use this one to always enter a date which is, D minus 10 of your current date, if you only want to extract information for the last 10 days. And again, just reduce the load in the system. And this piece here is sets the maximum line. Again, important if you are expecting to extract more than 200 lines of data. So the next is to put %PC into the command line to start the extract. And here you can the two variables that you need to enter when you are specifying the file name and the path. So this is the CRM file name and this is the path, and then you click you click the press enter to actually extract the data. So the file gets created on your local drive. And that's the end of the the CRM action or the CRM extract. And the ECC extract does almost exactly the same. So again, you do SC16, you do VBAK. Again, you set a couple of parameters, and then you do %PC path and ECC file name, and then that's it. So the rest of the code comes from the recording. So with these two methods, we have the data out of SAP in a nice and convenient CSV file. And if we go back to the main code, then what happens now is we are switching to the CRM sheet, and we do delete all, and then we do this open CRM text file. So let's look at delete all first. Probably you can tell from the recording that I have actually created this piece of code using a macro. So you go into Excel, you select the macro, you click on the top cell, like if you are here, you click on this to select everything, and then you click delete, and then you stop the recording, and that's the piece of code which gets created. Cell select, and then query table, delete, clear contents, and you set the cursor back to A1. So that's all it does. And then you do this open CRM text file, and as you can see, it's just one line of code. It looks really, really complicated, but again, it all comes from a macro recording. So let me show you how I did it. So you go into the CRM tab, and let's say I delete everything. Okay, so everything is deleted. And the way you end the load a text file, I mean, you can do the file open as well, but if you go to data and you click from text, so actually let me start the recording. So I added this developer tab. You can turn it in the options, and then you click on record macro. So I'll just say macro 1. So I go back to data. So I do from text. So I select my text file, and then you are presented with the usual import dialog that you are probably all familiar with. The CRM, the SAP extract is delimited with a pipe. So I'm just going to do delimited. And actually for CRM, I only want to start at row 4, and then you take the comma out, and then you do pipe, and you do next, and you say that, okay, don't import the first one, and you probably don't even want to import that. And you can decide whether you want to import the client. I don't want to import it. And then the rest can be a text file, it's text. And then you come to the date. And the problem is you can't really do anything with the date. So it's always going to be imported like that. I think the extract is the way it appears, the way the date appears in your extract is based on your local settings, but I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, the other important thing I wanted to do, which I can't really do in here in CRM, but in ECC and the VBAK table, you have the net value. And if you are in the net value field, you can click on it once, and you can change the decimal separator, or the decimal and the thousand separator here during import, because that would be much easier to do than rather to to fix the data afterwards. So for me, it's always the other way around. So I just need to change the decimal separator to be that, and the thousand separator to be comma. And then you click on finish, and then you say that okay, you want to put it in to this sheet at A1. And you click OK. Obviously the data is imported, and then you stop the recording. And if we go back to Excel now, Excel has created a new module, and you can see that that's the exact piece of code which I have put into my script. So the only thing I have changed is obviously the first row where it says connection text, and in the original code you can see that text colon semicolon, and then you have the full path. So I have replaced that with double quotes and fpass and double quotes backslash crm5 blah blah blah. So I guess you get the idea. So the path gives me the path, and then with an extra backslash and the crm5 I will get the entire file name here, and then the rest of the code is exactly the same. And these data types, this piece of array is which tells you which fields to import and do not import. Import as text, import as date, and I think some of the separators are here as well, or maybe it's in the ECC one. So it's basically one single piece of code, which is this query tables add, and all the rest comes from the recording. And the ECC part is pretty much the same. Again, I've created the same recording. I changed the file name to this, which puts the file name together using the global variables. And of course the array is much bigger here because there are much more tables in VBAK than in CRM order ADMH, and you can see the 1000 separator and the decimal separator and the 1000 separator here, because in ECC I wanted to make sure that the net value appears correctly. And that would be pretty much it, because if we go to our main function, you can see that we've done the extract. We deleted all, we imported the CRM data, we deleted all in the ECC sheet, we imported the imported the ECC data, then we updated the actual extract date and time with the current timestamp, and then we are switching back to the summary sheet. So that's pretty much all it does. And then if you have a simpler scenario, it's going to be half as much that, because you only need to extract data from one system and you only have one CSV file that you need to import. And obviously, as you can see, you can connect to multiple systems, you can do multiple extracts. If you have a query, instead of using the SEC, instead of extracting data from a table, then you create a query, and then you execute that query in SC38. And that was the update part of the code. So the only thing which is left to discuss is these two buttons, which is the start update and the stop update. And these are the ones which actually activate and deactivate the timer. So if I go back to, so we can look at the macro assignment. So this button calls the start page cycle, and the other button calls the end page cycle methods in the code. So switching back to the code, let's see, start page cycle. Oh, it's really, really simple. So what I'm doing is doing this application display formula bar equals false, and then I'm calling the timer on function. And when I want to end, I call the application display formula bar to true, and I do the timer off. And what this line does is, as you can see on the summary page, I have turned on the grid lines because I don't want that to be visible, and I also turned off the heading, so this doesn't come on the main view. But then you also have the formula bar, so you can hide the formula bar as well, but that is global. That works for all the worksheets. So even if I go into control, my formula bar is hidden. So I wanted to hide that in the code, so if I'm not using the program, I can still see the formulas and then make some changes to it, so I don't have to come back here all the time and then turn it on and off manually. The main reason I wanted to hide the formula bar is to get a little bit more space on the screen, But there is one other trick which you can't really control from Visual Basic, so you have to do it manually. So in Office 2013, I think, so once this ribbon has been introduced, you got this additional button here besides minimize, between minimize and help. And if you click here and then you do auto hide ribbon, then this happens. And you pretty much have your entire screen or your entire sheet on the screen. Of course, you get this, small bar in here. So if you click, the ribbon appears, and also you get the tabs here. But other than that, you have the whole screen. And then, the show tabs and commands will bring the original view back. So that was all about starting the timer and stopping the timer. But there is one more piece of code which actually contains the logic which gets executed when the timer triggers. Well, actually before that, so I'm calling timer on and timer off function. But those are actually pieces of code in here as well. So the timer on is quite simple. If the timer state is false, then we are setting a timer. So we are doing this set timer, and in here you are setting the timer interval in milliseconds. So I think 300,000, that would be 20 minutes or something like that, or half an hour. Anyway, I'm not really good at math. And then if the timer ID is 0, then you just display a message that you couldn't create a timer, and then you exit. So something has happened in Windows. I can't really figure out when this would happen. It has never happened for me. So I just copy and pasted this piece of code from somewhere, and it just works fine. And at the end, I'm setting the timer state to true. So if you happen to click on the button twice, then it's not going to create 2 timers or anything like that. And the timer off is equally simple piece of code. So if the timer state is true, then you are calling this kill timer method. And again, if something happened, then you display a message that saying unable to stop the timer. Again, it has never happened for me. And finally, you are setting the timer state to false. So again, simple pieces of code. The only thing you need to change is this this value, which is in milliseconds again. And so once you call the set timer and the kill timer, once you call the set timer, then the system will generate an event every 300,000 milliseconds, and that event is basically this one. So again, it's called the timer process, and it is really simple, because all it does for me is call the start extract function, which we have discussed below. So and if there is any errors, then I just handle the exception by showing an error message saying error during extract. So this can be anything like we couldn't connect to SAP, or the file wasn't available, or there's something happened in the extract code. But again, it rarely happened for me. And that's it. So that would be the end of the code. Even though it looks like it's doing a lot of stuff and creating executing the script and saving a file and then picking up a file, importing into Excel, it worked really fine for me. So I had this piece of code running for every single day for about 1.5 weeks, and it was just doing its job. And as I said, I had 2 screens on my laptop. This was on the second screen, which I presented in a net meeting kind of cloud sharing service, and people just connected to it, and then they just looked at the stats. So nobody came to me bothering about how many orders we created today. Did we do 200? Did we do 500? Have we reached the 1,500, which was the goal for the first week or something like that. So again, this could be an easy, dirty thing that you can put together in a couple of hours, and maybe save you, people bothering you or something like that. So, but that would be all. Thanks for watching.